Edward C. Tolman's Contributions to Psychology. Directed by Michel Sicard. Tolman's main contributions to psychology were his studies involving the use of mazes to demonstrate learning principles in rats. Although he considered himself a behaviorist, his theories and research would be replicated and cited numerous times and would eventually lay the groundwork for what would become cognitive psychology. Tolman and his fellow field theorists used the analogy of an old-fashioned telephone exchange to describe the rat's central nervous system. Tolman wrote,
"The incoming impulses are usually worked over and elaborated in the central control room into a tentative cognitive-like map of the environment. And it is this tentative map indicating routes and paths and environmental relationships which finally determines what responses, if any, the animal will finally release."
Thus, Tolman is credited for coining the term cognitive map, which is the rat's overall knowledge of the general configuration, which includes both structure and spatial knowledge of the maze, which is established during learning. His major experiments were conducted at Berkeley University by his graduate students, which helped to provide evidence to support his beliefs in the presence of a cognitive map. In this video, we will go over two of his famous experiments in detail, as he described them in his paper entitled Cognitive Maps in Rats and Men. Experiment number 1, the latent learning experiment. One of Tolman's students, Blodgett, used a maze referred to as a 6-unit alley maze to run 3 different groups of rats. Group 1 was a control group, which were fed when they reached the goal. Group 2 was an experimental group who received no food during the trial for the first 6 days, but received food when reached the goal on the 7th day and every day after. Group 3 was another experimental group who received no food during the trial for the first 2 days, but received food when reached the goal on the 3rd day and every day after that. Both Group 2 and 3 displayed a smaller amount of errors the day after the transition from no food reward to having a food reward. This decrease in errors remained throughout the rest of the trials. Tolman believed that this observation indicated that the rats were able to learn the maze during the initial trials with no food reward and were able to use what they learned when the food rewards were introduced. His conclusion was that learning does not require reinforcement, and Tolman referred to this type of learning as latent learning. Thus, latent learning is learning that occurs in the absence of a reward. Experiment number 2, the spatial orientation experiment. Tolman's students, Ritchie and Kalish, used a maze referred to as an elevated maze to test whether rats develop a much wider spatial map, a comprehensive map, or just a map of the path they were trained on, a strip map. The rats were placed at position A, the starting point, and were expected to run through the maze to the goal, the box containing food, at position G. At position H was a light which lit up the pathway from position G to F. The rats were put in the maze 3 times each night for a total of 4 nights. At this point in the experiment, the rats would run straight from the start to the goal for the food box. Then the experimenters altered the maze by adding multiple radiating paths, while maintaining the original A to D path. The rats were then placed into a newly altered maze. The rats, as anticipated, ran the way they had been trained, straight from A to D, but at D they were blocked off. In response to being blocked off, the rats would then begin to investigate the newly available paths, but would only choose one path to run all the way down and out. Tolman demonstrated through a bar graph that the majority of rats chose path number 6, which led up to a position very close to where the food box entrance had been in the previous experiments. These results led Tolman to conclude that the rats had developed a comprehensive cognitive maps while running in the maze, such that they learned the position instead of the individual movements necessary to get where they had been previously rewarded with the food.